So hi everyone, my name is Cairo Eubanks. I'm class of 2017, so I graduate this year. Whoop, whoop. I am a Watson, or I was a Watson International Fellow in Political Research, and I was on the beautiful island of Jamaica for my research, and I worked with the law offices of Andrea in Kingston, Jamaica. So a little bit about attorney Andrea Moore. She's both a politician and an attorney. And so she was with the People's National Party, which is a major political party in Jamaica. And she's also an attorney, so I was able to work with her, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later in terms of my responsibilities, but I was able to work with her and see her do her work in terms of civil law and government contracts, so that was pretty cool. So the internship scope. So there were two parts to my internship. The first part was my work as an administrative assistant. And so what I did was I basically worked with her day to day in terms of scheduling her events, or scheduling, being part of the scheduling of her meetings, being able to be with her during events, and also really shadowing her day to day. I'm interested in going to law school, and I'm also interested in practicing in Jamaica. So it was really cool for me to get to see what it's like to be an attorney in Kingston, Jamaica. The second part of my project was actually research. So I did independent research. The title of my project was Gender Quotas in Jamaica, Weaving Together the Narrative of Literature and Jamaican Voices to Predict the Effect of Quotas and Women in Politics. So I was actually inspired by an Aparna Thomas class I took, yes, and it was Strategies to Alleviate Poverty. So it was focusing primarily on developing nations and what can be done in order to become more developed. So there were definitely different strategies that were used, including education, focusing on education, but also on politics. So making sure that more women are being represented in politics in order to have more of a reflection of the actual country and the country, like those who are part of that, that country's interests be represented as well. So that's basically what gender quotas are. It's a strategy to alleviate some of the gender disparities. So an example of gender quotas would be perhaps reserved seats. So 30% of the seats, let's say, would be allocated to women only. That's an example of a gender quota. And so for my research, I was able to interview politicians, scholars, and citizens. So I was really blessed and fortunate to have been able to interview several senators. And so what I was trying to do was trying to figure out like how people felt on the ground about this. Were there people who were extremely excited about this? Were there concerns? If anyone was apprehensive or any challenges that they thought it might pose having gender quotas, I wanted to find out. So as I said before, my project focused primarily on gender quotas, and a lot of my duties included finding and scheduling interviews, which let me tell you was a lot harder than it sounded. But I was grateful for all of the interviews I had. I was also able to conduct interviews, write up my findings, and then be able to synthesize that information after analyzing it for my research. So my results. So it's a long paper, so I can only give like a sentence or two just for time's sake. But some of the people who were advocates of gender quotas felt as though it was an aggressive way to have women be represented in politics and be able to inspire young men and women, especially young women, to be in more leadership positions. So even if you didn't necessarily go into the political sphere, the fact that you were being represented, I think is very inspiring. So that was something that resonated with a lot of people who advocated for that. And then for those who had concerns about gender quotas, a concern was that it would be basically that women would be chosen not based on merit, but based on the simple fact that they were women. And that was something that I delved into in terms of kind of debunking that myth in my paper. So as a whole, before I get into that, why more women aren't in politics, that was a case study that I did specifically for Jamaica. And I think a lot of the reasons that more women were not participating in politics resonates very well with women in different countries, including the United States, in terms of sexism, blatant forms of sexism, as well as just not enough campaign funding for incoming candidates who also may be women. So my conclusion, it's very, very simplified, but my conclusion was that this was really increasing women's political participation, no matter what the strategy was, whether it's gender quotas or not, is extremely essential in terms of inspiring young women in other sectors. And it would also get rid of some of the societal norms in terms of how women were being associated in the country. So I thought that it was a fantastic way. It's not the only way, as my paper says, but it is a way. So at the end of it, I came up with a 50-page paper, which I'm extremely proud of, and I was able to use it for my honors thesis defense in the politics department, and I'm actually defending it next week, so wish me luck. So what did I learn? There were two parts to it. So professionally, I learned time management. So I was working on several projects, both with my job at the law office and also my research. So just really being on top of my time was really essential. Being assertive, making sure that these interviews actually happened was really, really crucial. So making sure that I was following up with people and being assertive in a way that was not overtly aggressive, but just being able to get what I needed to get done. I was able to learn a little bit more about Jamaica, so a little bit about myself. I'm half Jamaican on my mother's side, and so Jamaica's always been a big part of me. And growing up, I only really knew more of the cultural side, but it was great to get even more cultural competency as well as learn more about the politics of Jamaica, so that was great. And then personally, increased independence and budgeting. Budgeting was a really big thing, so that word adulting really came into play. So that was really good for me in terms of being able to budget out like my groceries, for example, and making sure that I had something to eat. It was really important. And so I didn't do as much cooking as you did, but I definitely paid for my food, so that's important. And then the last one is personal growth and patience. So I'm someone who's, I'll admit, I'm very type A, and so it was very hard sometimes to have to work on other people's schedules, especially when I wanted to make sure that I was following my schedule the way I needed to, but I realized that it wasn't just about me and that I was actually getting, it was a really big deal that I was able to interview with some of the people that I did. So that was great. So the internship impact was that it validated my interest in attending law school and going to specialize specifically in international law. And I would ultimately love to return back to Jamaica and work within the political reform sector, or at least within international development, working for community empowerment and women's empowerment. And so there's some projects that I have in Jamaica that I'm going to be working, ultimately going back and working for. And so there were personal connections. I got to meet a role model of mine and a mentor, Dr. Trevor Monroe, who was a Rhodes Scholar and just an amazing man for Jamaica, and he actually talked to me about possibly doing some research with him after I graduate, or sometime between when I graduate here and go to law school, which is kind of a big deal. So I was really, really excited about that. So special thanks to Andrea Moore, David Yamanishi, thank you for being here, Laura Farmer, and the Cornell Fellows and BCI staff for making this all possible. Thank you.